So I spent the first half of 2026 reading books that nobody talks about anymore, and they were some of the best reads I've had in years. And you may be wondering why I'm holding a hat. But first, let me introduce myself. I'm Sarah. We talk about books here, and today I'm doing the Mid Year Freakout Tag. Guess what? It's June. Guess what? It's summer. It's amazing. And in this hat, I have compiled all the questions of the Mid Year Freakout Tag. So, like a couple of years ago, I did a version of this. And I was told right afterwards that I did the long version. So apparently the normal version is like 7 questions or something like that. And I don't know why. I found like a whole thing of like 16, I believe, interesting questions. So that's what we'll be tackling. That is why the mic has moved. That is why I only brought 16 books, I believe. I read about 32, which is quite decent for my yearly goal of 52. So I know I kind of want to be reading longer books as we approach the summer, like long novels. And so I hope I will make the 52 cut. But anyway, I'm going to take from the hat, I cut the questions in little pieces, and I'm gonna just randomly pick one up. Oh, best sequel you've read this year. So this has to be the only sequel, the only series, because I'm not a series reader. I'm usually a standalone reader. I think series is more for like genre books, like sci-fi or fantasy. Not that I never read those. I do love a good sci-fi or fantasy book. I just I'm not used to doing that. But this is kind of, you could say that this is sci-fi, like speculative fiction. It's on the calculation of volume. The third volume of the calculation of volume. I've talked about this book a lot because I've started reading it last year, and I believe now actually there's the 4th installment that is out, and I haven't read it yet. But this is actually the first book that I've read this year. I think after New Year's Eve, I was just reading it in the countryside with my grandparents, like in the world of Tara Selter, who, if you haven't read I haven't heard about this book, it's a woman who is stuck in the perpetual 18th of December. So she can move around, but time just looping. She realizes that it's the same day over and over again, and nobody around her seems to know that that's the case except for her. So she's the only one stuck in time. So this is still great. I preferred this one than the second one. Or was the other way around? I don't really remember actually. But it was good. I like this. I like this a lot. And then a next question we have, biggest disappointment. So that is very clear to me. It is actually the only book I think that was released this year. And it is from a contemporary author, Ben Lerner, Transcription. Transcription is not a book that I remember very well. And I know I was disappointed because I usually come into these books with a kind of expectations, books that are about writers. So the main character of this book is a writer who goes to interview a mentor who is in his 90s, I believe. And he forgets, when he gets there, he forgets that he just forgets his recording device. And so he doesn't dare tell that to the guy that he's interviewing, and so it's kind of, I don't know, it wants to be a sort of contemplation about the way that technology affects our lives, but I didn't really get that much of that. It felt a little bit scrambled for me. So for me, this was a disappointment. It was my first Ben Lerner. I will not give up. I've been looking into the Atocha station, leaving the Atocha station from him, but I don't know. It's not going to be my priority. So let's go to the next question. Fictional crush. Fictional crush. This is a cool question. Fictional crush, because I have to then justify it. So that will definitely have to be from James Baldwin's novel, Tell Me How Long the Train Has Been Gone. This is following the character of Leo Proudhammer, who is a black man in, I believe this is set in the 70s, in the end of 60s, beginning of 70s. And he discovers a passion for the theater and for the theater. And he is one of the first black actors at the time. And so we follow a bit, his childhood growing up as a black man, as a black kid in Harlem, and his feeling of alienation, not only because he's black, but also because he feels alienated due to his temperament of a, showman. And you also get that interesting kind of friction between a man who hides ultimately, who wants to hide, and yet needs to perform, needs to be on the stage, needs to sort of forget himself through something in which paradoxically he also exposes himself. So this was a great novel, by the way. It was one of the best novels I've read ever, I think. I think I'm always sort of savoring James Baldwin's novels. This one is one of his lesser known novels. And I wonder why. I know that most people read Giovanni's Room, which is the only other one that I read, which is a much shorter novella set in Paris. But he really has a way of speaking about the heart, and of sort of compressing the paradoxes of life into his characters and making his characters embody this essence that struggles to just exist or feel like it has its place in the world. And there is the quote at the back of the book that I found. I think this is the reason why I actually picked up the book and said, okay, I'm gonna read this. And that is, everyone wishes to be loved, but in the event, sorry. So everyone wishes to be loved, but in the event, nearly no one can bear it. And I can't think of anything more true than that. Let's save the digression about love for other books. But this is highly recommended. All right, Hat, give us another one. Most memorable character. Oh, definitely. Oh, I don't have the book with me. That's too bad. I've lent the book to someone since. And it's Godlike by Richard Hell. I'm going to list down the books so you will have a list of them. So T from Godlike. Godlike is one of the best novels I've ever read. It's one of the only novels that I've read, and immediately wanted to reread it, like, as soon as I finished it. I kind of regret not doing it. I was like, I'm gonna just read it after the next book, but I didn't, and then eventually I gave it away. But damn. So it is set in New York in the 70s. It's a gay love story, erotic story, love story ultimately, between two poets. So the main character is Paul, and it opens with the novel sort of him being in a hospital bed, and he's reminiscing about his first love because he's terminally ill, and the classic sort of opening of a book. But we all love it. If it's executed well, it's good. And he wants to tell this love story he had with a character named T. And T is the whole book is basically this retelling of the story of Rimbaud and Verlaine, who were like these, these cross-fated poets in France. Rimbaud being this sort of rebellious, free spirit, completely, the mystical alien, completely out of this world, completely. He embodies the spirit of punk, actually. And T really has that. So also, obviously, in New York at the time, punk was a big thing. And you have this permeated all the way, through the book. And T is so provocative. He has the best lines. I regret not having the book so that I could quote him. but he really has the best lines in the book. And it was interesting because the author kept talking about love and how he truly loved that character, even though that he knew that he was such a restless kind of person that he could never really be owned, like, Jack Kerouac style. And actually, Rimbaud himself eventually quit poetry. It was like this big thing where he was only in his 20s, where he quit poetry and he was just like, I'm just gonna travel all around Africa and like kill people. I don't actually know if he actually killed people, but I think he did some extremes and the like, because he died in Africa and nobody really knows how he died. But he basically left everything behind, left poetry behind, like it wasn't important. But he Rimbaud dumped on our world the most beautiful poetry collections, and I was completely in love with the premise when I read it. And it's also one of those editions, the New York Review of Books, and those editions are great. They always make great books, or republish great books. So yeah, definitely the most memorable character. Okay, hidden gem. Ooh. It will have to be The Invention of Everything Else by Samantha Hunt. So yeah, this novel is phenomenal. It's weird. It's one of these weird books. It follows it's basically the story of Nikola Tesla, but mixed with time travel, and a chambermaid in a hotel that discovers his room. She's a woman who likes to explore, um, you know, people's rooms in hotels. And she discovers the room of Tesla, and he has this weird obsession with pigeons. So I thought that was an interesting premise to it, and I admit that I didn't understand totally the book. Like the plot is kind of goes all over the place. It's very wacky, it's very absurd, but it is also very existential and poetic, and that's why the mix of all of those just made it very, very exceptional for me. Very exceptional. Very exceptional. It was exceptional. It was phenomenal. This is a beautiful book. I recommend it 100%. So, next question. Most shocking book. Most shocking book. So shocking for what? Shocking can be anything. But the most shocking would be the story, the real true story, man. Is the real true story of Alexandra. David Néel, who is the author of the book. It is written, or no, published in the 1920s. She probably did beginning of the 19th century. This woman called Alexandra David Néel, who was a scholar. She was French, and she was also a traveler. She was one of the first female travel writers. And in this book, she basically journeys to Lhasa in Tibet. She treks through snow and jungle and has to basically disguise herself as a peasant. And she has her adopted son with her, and it is, you would think that it's not real. It's just the adventures that she goes through, the things that she says, the customs, the death customs, for example, in Tibet at the time. It was also fascinating. And she was also the first woman who met the Dalai Lama, who actually entered the palaces of Lhasa and met the Dalai Lama. And in this edition, there is a foreword by the Dalai Lama of the time. So one of the best adventure books, definitely. I would also recommend this very much. All right, next question. My recommendation to everyone. My recommendation to everyone would be definitely Stand Still Like a Hummingbird by Henry Miller. It is basically all of Henry Miller's philosophy of life. And Henry Miller has it's I can't explain. I can't explain. He has, to me, he's one of the authors that has the most clarity, in my opinion, about the world in general. And I think also his way of conceptualizing and seeing the world is very much Eastern, very much based on Eastern philosophy. And stand still like a hummingbird is a beautiful metaphor, of course. What I love about Henry Miller is his prose and how he dances around the ideas a little bit. He never really settles on any question because he has the sort of wisdom to know that a thing in itself exists because of its opposite. And and he doesn't reconcile the opposites in any clean way, and therefore all of his essays about practically anything, or his nonfiction and his fiction, really have that like texture and that technicolor of life. He's hungry for life, and you can feel it. And he's also extremely well read, and this is really just a collection of stories and essays. When I read this, I laughed a lot, and when I saw the reviews of it, that made me want to read it. Initially, I read another book of his first, and all the reviews were like, "I'm gonna give this." I just tore my copy. I read it over and over, and I just gave it to all of these people. And I'm like, again, sorry. And I want to do the same thing. So this is my recommendation for everyone. If you haven't read any Henry Miller, dare I say, do not start with Tropic of Cancer, is it? Or Tropic of Capricorn? That was his most famous one. It's a novel, but I would suggest his essays, his nonfiction. I'm really into his nonfiction. So the next is going to be what was your most anticipated read this year? My most anticipated read this year was London Falling by Patrick Radden Keefe. A mysterious death in a gilded city and a family search for truth. I anticipated this book a lot. A lot. I've read only Rogues by Patrick Radden Keefe. I've started Empire of Pain a while ago. I never finished it. Empire of Pain is the story of the Sackler family, the dynasty. They basically created the whole opioids epidemic. They were responsible for the whole opioids epidemic in the US. And Patrick Radden Keefe writes these amazing books that are basically just profiles of oddballs or strange stories, or sort of like, yeah, stories that would never have seen the light and the scandals behind them. And most particularly, I think he has a really razor blade. He has a scalpel onto characters, onto human beings, onto misfits in the most extreme kinds. And that's what I loved about Rogue, and that's what I loved about London Falling. I anticipated this so much that I was slightly disappointed by it. The story itself, the case itself, isn't, I don't know, it crescendos and then it kind of doesn't really resolve in the way that I had hoped it would be. But it is not, it is not a mystery. It is a true story of a boy, rather, a teenage boy, named, what was his name? I don't remember his name. Zach. Yeah, Zach Bretler. And it's the story of how he had this elaborate disguise. He was basically a con artist, a very young con artist. He had this elaborate disguise of being the son of a rich Russian oligarch in London. And I believe he died in 2019 during COVID. So this was a very recent story. And he allegedly jumped off, this is not a spoiler, but he jumped in the river, in the Thames, and he died. And so we're investigating why and which people he got involved with. And what you have is basically this panorama of all of these weird ass criminals that he got involved with, and they're trying to reconstruct the story. His parents are wondering what went wrong. His parents are kind of affluent. This is really depicting a very affluent side of London, where you sort of wonder what it's about. Is it a critique? It is a modern critique of technology and of social media, and how we are influenced by the narratives that we see or that we seek to construct about ourselves through social media and all. But mostly I felt that it was what I said about what he did the best, which is just painting portraits, very elaborate and fine and meticulous portraits of various human beings. And there's so many interesting stories of these weird ass criminals that he gets involved with. So yeah, you got crime, you got rich people, you got death, you got murder mystery, and well, it was still brilliant. So yeah, I do also recommend this one. They're all good. I think there's only one of these that I probably wouldn't recommend. And I already talked about it. So you got the gist. Best world building. I wish I had a, let's say, more novels in here. I feel like I've been reading a lot of nonfiction. And the best world building I'm going to attribute to a nonfiction book. It's an essay collection. An essay collection by, look, boobies! Eve Babitz, babies. Eve Babitz. This is Eve's Hollywood. Eve Babitz. If you know Joan Didion, Western, very famous writer of California, particularly from the times of the 60s, 70s, 80s. This is, I believe, set in the 60s, early 70s. Eve Babitz is journalist, party girl, bookworm, artist, muse. By the time she'd hit 30, Eve Babitz had played all of these roles. She was also a beautiful and talented writer, and it was so much fun to read this book. And I say this is the best world building because she really paints a beautiful portrait of Bohemia, Bohemia Hollywood, Bohemia West Coast, Bohemia California. And her prose seems kind of all over the place, but it's actually not. It's very controlled, and she knows what she's talking about. She from like crazy parties with LSD and certain characters. Her dad was very well connected. She was kind of a nepo baby, but we forgive her because she's a great writer, and you just feel like you're with her in there, and you definitely have FOMO because whenever I read about the West Coast during the 60s and 70s, I got the FOMOs, man. I got it. And I mean, look at that. It looked so fun. It looked so fun. And yeah, best world building. All right, next question. Shortest book. Shortest book is oddly the book that did I lose it? I don't even, oh, it's here. I don't even remember much of it. I think it was maybe a bit too academic for me. I know I loved it, but just because I love this author, and that is The Gender of Sound by Carson. Human history is filled with all of these strange sounds. She investigates the sounds of words and their provenance. And yeah, it's very short. It's basically an essay. It's 30 pages, and it was it was forgettable. I admit it was forgettable, but there's something about Anne Carson and her prose that to me feels deeply erotic for some reason. I don't know if it's because she keeps circling very similar themes. You always get a little whip of, death and rebirth and transformation in all of her books. Whatever the topic that is she's tackling, you will feel that edge. And I think that's why I enjoy her books, even if at the end of them, I'm completely gonna forget everything that I just read. Obviously, it goes into Sappho, into the Greek ancient poets, because Anne Carson is, after all, a classicist. All right, the next question is this. Okay, waited till 2026 to finally read. This one. Antwerp, right? I was going to give out my address there. Antwerp by Roberto Bolano. I remember once I was at a party and I was with a bunch of Chilean people, people from Chile, and they were super nice. And I was like, oh, I know Chilean literature, Roberto Bolano, but I had never read any of his books. And I was just like, yeah, he's a great writer, isn't he? And then I had to verify for myself. And it's true. And I can't believe I waited this long to read him. I still want to read The Savage Detectives, one of his classics. I want to read 2666, another one of his classics. Those are massive books, like more than 1,000 pages. But everybody that reads them says that they're in for a ride. It feels like one of those books that is a life-changing experience. And I wanted to start with something short. So this is very short. It's also a sort of a series of vignettes. I don't know why I said the word also. I think I say it because I often talk about books in this format, vignette style, because I like it so much. I like the compressed paragraph and everything that it can convey, or everything that you can convey in a compressed paragraph to say, for the things that there's some stuff, that you can, that you just don't really have the time to say, and yet by having this compression, authors find a way to be more subtle in a way, and to really focus as well on imagery. And that's why I love vignettes. And this was full of imagery because it's about this detective, and he is elucidating this crime, and he has all these suspects, and every vignette is a specific scene, and it's almost dreamlike, and you don't really understand whether it's a dream or not. It's, for example, the Calabria Commune campground, according to a sensationalistic article in Penn. Harassed by the townspeople. Inside, the campers walked around naked. 6 kids dead in the surrounding area. So yeah, those kind of intense images all in this book, and I will be reading more of Bolano. We have a few questions left. Low, and behold the next one. Fave movie fave. I actually don't like saying fave. Fave. What a weird thing to say. Favorite movie adaptation. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't think any of these have been made into a movie, but I think I'm going to answer this question by saying the one that I wish was a movie. It may already be a movie, actually. Something to verify. It's based... the movie exists. It's based on the novel of... I forgot the name of the author. It is The Invention of Morel. I don't have the book with me. It's also one of the other books that I don't have. And so this book is crazy. I had never heard of it before, and it's this forgotten sci-fi novel from the 1940s. It's a South American novel, and it was hailed by no other than Jorge Borges as a masterful novel, a masterfully crafted novel, a masterfully plotted novel, as well as from Julio Cortázar and Octavio Paz, Mexican poet, and all of those South American greats. I also think Roberto Bolano actually said that about this book, that it was one of the best books ever. And so obviously, it's a very tiny book. Obviously, I was very curious to read it. It's by Adolfo Bioy Casares. I was very intrigued, and it's kind of like a tropical goth. This is kind of the way that I would describe it. It's tropical goth, man. Tropical sci-fi goth. It's this guy that's stuck on this island, and there's other people in it, but they're a bit strange. Their proportions are always different. And then he realizes, I can't spoil too much, but I think this isn't a spoiler. He realizes that they may not be real. But that is kind of the unsettled question in the book. And it is full of intrigue. It is like you can feel that there is an existential dread, but also an existential intrigue, like a philosophical intrigue, on top of the actual events that are unfolding in the book. And I would love to see this. I would love to see tropical goth in the fucking movies. I hope that there's a book. So, okay, next one. The most unique book.
it's oddly not oddly, but it's the book that is the most difficult to describe, I suppose. It is by Clarice Lispector. She's also one of the most unique, I think, writers ever. Hour of the Star. She was a Brazilian author. And by unique, I mean she deliberately challenged grammar and syntax, but in a way that is so masterful that you know it's not by accident. In fact, there was often a lot of friction with her translators or with her publishers and rather editors about the specific wordings that she used, the specific rhythms and the specific syntax. I would say that Clarice Lispector is kind of like jazz. When you read her, that's what it feels like, and yet there's a coherence to it, and yet the story feels like it's going somewhere. But ultimately, most of her books are very introspective. The things that happen, nothing really quite happens. It's just a character going about kind of more or less ordinary things. In Hour of the Stars, specifically, you follow a young girl, and she's apparently one of the ugliest girls in Rio, ugliest and poorest girls, and yet the narrator claims she's also the most free. And the weird thing is that the narrator is also a character in the book, but he keeps contradicting himself, and he keeps sort of adding a meta commentary layer to his interpretation of events or to his interpretation of the character that he's describing. There is a sort of deliberate breaking, not just of a fourth wall. It really feels like there's a deliberate breaking also of the fifth or sixth or seventh wall. And you can feel that, when you're on stage in the theater or in the movies, breaking the fourth wall is very clear, right? There's 3 dimensions. You break the first wall, you talk to the audience. But here the audience is also, the narrator to himself, the narrator to ourselves, the narrator to the character that he's describing, that he's at the same time involved with and at the same time not. So it is really weird. It's one of these weird books, but it's like definitely something to experience, I think. It's not for everyone, I think, but it is worth it. Worth trying if you like weird books. Next question. Most thought-provoking or life-changing. I wouldn't say that any of these have been life-changing. Thought-provoking, I would say definitely In the Freud Archives by Janet Flanner. Who will inherit the secrets of Sigmund Freud? Who will protect his reputation? And who may destroy it? Ladies and gentlemen, this is the drama unfolding between a bunch of academics. It's not as boring as you think. It is as ridiculous as it sounds. It's very enthralling. It's basically a story it's an investigation into literally who gets to inherit Freud's archives. There is a man that is assigned, at the time at least, who was assigned to Freud's archives, and he found a sort of protege. That's such a funny word. And this guy is like this. I'm just going to read the back because I'm not going to be able to describe it as well as this. It is both a comedy and a tragedy. Malcolm's cast of characters includes K.R. Eisler, a venerable psychoanalyst and keeper of the Freud flame, Jeffrey Mason, a flamboyant Sanskrit scholar, like who? Like why a Sanskrit scholar? And virulent anti-Freudian who wants to inherit his archives. Anyway, and Peter Swales, a former assistant to the Rolling Stones and indefatigable researcher. Each of them thinks they know the truth about Freud, and each needs the help of the other. Janet Malcolm, that is, endeavors to entangle the causes of their rivalry and soured friendships, while the mysteries and flaws of Freud's early work tower in the background. Anyway, it was great. You should read it. Book that made you the most mad. None of these made me mad in the sense of, oh, this is so bad, it makes me mad. Unless that's actually not the question. But this one kind of made me mad for like associative reasons. An Army of Lovers Cannot Fail. This is actually quite ironic for the title, by Helene Giannecchini, who is actually, well, she's probably Italian, but this was actually written in French initially. it was a great book. I really loved it. So it wasn't that I disliked it so much that it made me mad, but it's tackling something interesting. It's tackling love and the structure of relationships. Um yeah, just the structure of relationships and just inherited structures in general. It particularly zooms in onto queer history and um basically how the queer community has, in a way, revolutionized the way that we conceptualize relationships and challenging sort of many kind of norms. And the main example that she takes from that is from the AIDS epidemic, where a lot of people died, and there was this sort of secret outrage kind of, and also grief from the queer community at the fact that at the time that the epidemic broke out, being gay wasn't as accepted as it is today, not to the same extent. And a lot of the, of course, these still exist, but a lot of the people who were dying or had died were not allowed to really have the proper ceremonial mourning of their loved ones, because their families would not want to accept them being gay, and it would bring such a shame on their families that they would basically not allow any gay ex-boyfriends, whatever, and just kind of completely disfigure the lives of the AIDS victims. And how that was really painful because it made them realize that there is a systemic violence against people who want to love freely. And there's a sort of relational anarchy tint underneath this, which is a relation, like a philosophy of relating, which basically posits that there is that all relationships are actually to be negotiated, and they don't have to follow a certain script. So I think this particularly hints at affiliation. So who you are allowed to be affiliated to. If, for example, a throuple would like to get married, that you can't legally get married as a throuple, for example. That's just an example of what kind of thing that she critiques. And it is a retelling a bit of certain characters that she found in archives. So I think the author is an archivist, and she would be entranced by certain photographs that she would meet. And she had a very interesting background story, which is that she grew up with three parents, which is one mom and two dads. And the whole thing kind of looks into community, chosen family, and how that reflects and how that relates to kind of the imposed structures of how we're supposed to live in this world. And I think that's why it made me mad. It made me mad in the sense of we are pushed into certain narratives that sometimes don't benefit us, and sometimes a lot of people will sort of be gaslit by the mainstream narratives, the one path that you should take, and think that they're the problem. So that's just one example. And it's just sort of the injustice that a certain way creates for everybody else who doesn't really fit in that mold. And those are just the thoughtscapes that kind of came up. And these kind of topics for me are kind of touchy, for reasons that you may understand. Fave non-romantic relationship. This is My Year in Paris with Gertrude Stein, by Deborah Levy, a fiction. I never know how to pronounce her name. It's stupid. I think every time I pronounce her name, I don't know. Someone tell me. This is about a woman who is writing about Gertrude Stein, an avant-garde writer from the 20th century, the beginning of the 20th century in Paris. So she's basically writing an essay about Gertrude Stein, and that's why she's in Paris. Very bourgeois, of course, but she is she has a friendship with these two women that is so cute, and they spend the whole book kind of looking for a cat and having very funny names for the cat. And there's a quirkiness to it. There's a lightness to this. There's a sort of almost comedic absurdity to their friendship and their relationship. They're kind of all oddballs that don't really talk much, and so the dialogue is quite it goes in quite unexpected directions in a very cute and funny way. These were like characters that were very nice to be around, and their relationship was what made that even better. And we're almost done. Three left. Longest book has to be the one that I'm reading right now. Let's say it counts. Right now I'm reading Ruins. It's like so big. So big. Whoa! Whoa! What the hell? 578 pages. Damn! Look at me reading the big books. I got no big book fear, man. It's also written in very big letters. It's Lily Brooks Dalton. She wrote some of my favorite books, actually. She wrote only the 2 books, The Light Pirate and Good Morning Midnight. And those are kind of sci-fi-ish. She's very much sci-fi, speculative fiction, let's say. It's actually much better. This is about an archaeologist who discovers a rare artifact. She is 3,000 years in the future, so let's say the weird artifact is from our times. And in this book, we are like the pre-crisis. Right now, we're living in the pre-crisis era. And so it is about this archaeologist coming to terms with her academic career, and it's less about the let's say the speculative aspect of it than it is more about how she grapples with her theories about the past, but also her ambitions and how that kind of severs her from the world. It's the biggest book, no doubt. And now, most beautiful book. I believe 2 years ago I had shown an actual copy of a book that I found absolutely stunning. This is a simple black book. Simple, very simple. I do know some things by Richard Seiken, and he is a poet. He's a poet. This is his newest poetry collection, and people have been waiting for this, like the new album of the Beatles. I am not kidding. There are several people that made that comparison, that analogy online. It's so beautiful. It is just gorgeous poetry. And I think what's interesting about this, what I love, like a subset of poetry that I love, is prose poetry. So they're prose poems, which means that they're little blocks, kind of like vignettes. And, well, they are vignettes. And in here, he's kind of recounting his healing. I think he had an accident wherein he couldn't actually write anymore. And he had a hard time with language. And so it is the poems that he produced in that state, and also the poems that came afterwards. And there's a lot of scenes in the hospital, a lot of childhood memories, because he's, I guess, grappling and coming to terms with certain of his childhood memories, because facing an accident like that, I guess it makes you question all kinds of things in relation to your past and your becoming. And what I love about it is that it's so his use of rhythm, and paired with his imagery, it's perfect. Do I read one? Yes. Angel of crowning, and angel of breaching, angel of leaving, angel of grieving, angel of elbow, angel of bright, angel of terrible, monster of terrible, music and terrible, a big small music and several terrible, 1,000 tremendous, blot everything out, the stars, blot everything, stop staying broken, angel of broken, angel of broken, angel of broken, angel of broken. You get the gist. Actually, this was not a good example, I guess, because most of the poems are not in this style. But then you got little surprises like that here and there. And now we're gonna go to the last one. Fave new author, debut or new to you? New to me, let's say I've known about him for a while. I've talked about him already. Henry Miller is actually one of my favorite. It's my first one. I don't know if it's my favorite because it's my first one, but my oh my, I dog-eared all of the pages and underlined everything and wrote wow on the margins. It's about his. It's taken from all of his essays where he writes about writing, and I read this in the beginning of the year, and after that, I just he's kind of a drug. I keep reading him. I've read about like 5 other of his books after that, and it's kind of like this. I don't usually do that with many authors, and so let's say that I completely fell in love with Henry Miller's writing. I think he's maybe my new favorite author of all time, actually. Yeah, that was my freakout, my Mid Year Freakout tag. And I think I'm gonna make another video to maybe wrap up all the books that I haven't mentioned. But in the meantime, I'm gonna use these papers to make a fan. Bye! Wait, I hope you liked it.